Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and Mateen is filling in for Qasim today. And our guest today is Tyler. So Tyler, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I live in New York, and I help build some extra smart LLM systems.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your system and exactly what it does and how you got the idea for it?
Yeah, so absolutely. What it primarily does in a nutshell is connects the LLMs to some external tools. So the main limitation being you look at GPT or Bard or any of these other ones, and they're effectively like these incredibly magical encyclopedias that are really great at pulling together historical data. However, they fail when it comes to be like, what's the weather today? Or I want you to take an action for me. So they are this giant brain in a box, and they need connections to external resources in order for them to be useful at all, outside of just being really good at giving you dictionary information. And so that's what we work on. The way we got started was I was in the healthcare space, actually working with some like LLM tools for helping people find like the best health plans. And then Anna was working on like data pipeline work, and then other co-founder Ronald working in like finance. And it was just we were kind of commiserating around the fact that we had built the same exact set of tools 3 times independently, and all 3 of them were not really like super high quality. Because everyone's hacking stuff together in-house, and that kind of got us inspired to go out and be like, hey, we need to build something that really just supports the application layer here. I mean, OpenAI and all these other companies are doing great at actually producing these high quality models, but that's only a small piece of the puzzle right here. Like you have this model, it's effectively magic, but you need something wrapped around it that actually makes it functional in like a day-to-day environment.
Sure. So what was your biggest challenge starting this company?
Picking a direction to go in was the biggest challenge. It's one of those things. That's why the company's name is Omni. It is a little omnidirectional, and I'd say we haven't solved this problem quite yet. We work with we've got clients who are like lawyers. We've got people who are running search engines, people who are doing insurance products. When you boil it down, at the end of the day, it's asking an LLM to complete a task, and then connecting a custom set of tools to match whatever those tasks are. Really gets you almost anything. It roughly describes like most jobs. And that's one of those big things is like, okay, you want to find like a good niche for to operate in, because that makes it very easy to have a clear sense of direction in life and like what you're building, where you're going. And I'd say that's where we struggle right now, is like, do we have a niche? Do we want to niche down? Do we want to focus on legal tech? Maybe it's a big space, but then if you do that, you cut off all this other potential use cases that are effectively the exact same tool.
Sure. So if you don't have a niche now, how do you know who to target?
Good question. That's the issue, is it's a little bit broad on the marketing side. If you have a good niche, you can target down people much easier. What we do right now is we mostly focus on like the tools that we currently have. So we've got a lot of stuff that's around like moving data from like your warehouse into like a Pinecone database for the vector searchability. So we look for anybody who's has a lot of stuff where they're trying to do like the vector searching on it, and they're manually creating all of these databases, and we target those people, saying like this tool solves this job. Same thing with we had a lot of stuff that was like document parsing, so parsing these big like 300-page PDFs, and that was very useful for the legal case. That's like the primary tool that people were interested in. is, parsing and then like completing templates based on this big chunk of data. And so, we took that and abstracted it a little bit more, and we actually targeted some finance companies. And it's the same thing where it's just like, hey, do you want to ask questions about the last 5 like 10Ks that Apple published? Because it's the same data right there.
So answer for right now, how are you getting the word out about Omni?
Pretty general, like cold outreach on a lot of things. So mostly LinkedIn, I think, is where our biggest like success channel is. A little bit of like email outreach, but cold email outreach is pretty dead, I think. And then beyond that, working on building up more of a sort of like SEO channel. So do a lot of writing and publishing there.
So LinkedIn, you say, has been the best channel, like by far, in terms of traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, compared to doing things like cold email outreach, LinkedIn has when we find the right people for it, we get 10-15% response rates. Emails are always like sub 1% response rates, and you just have to blow up people's email inboxes. So it's not a worthwhile pursuit, I'd say.
So do you do other methods like cold calling or Twitter, even, like, any of those channels?
Yeah, we do a little bit of tweeting. No cold calling, but a little bit of tweeting. Still brushing up on that one. I was never super huge into Twitter, so it's a little bit of a learning curve.
So what makes you better than your competition?
I would say a focus on getting the infrastructure correct is what makes us better than our competition. And it's like one of the big things is offering like fewer tools, fewer integrations, but doing something that works correctly. I think that there's a lot of other things out there, like a LangChain's a good example if you're familiar with that. So that started as a big like open source library, fundraised, got some money, and they're kind of productizing around it, and was really popular. But and this is what we had used previously when I was working, but they're very like very broad, shallow approach to the problem space, where their goal is just to say like, we offer 100 integrations here, and it's like they offer 100 mostly broken integrations with no plans to develop those further. So we're doing a bit more of a slow build out in terms of like what features we're onboarding here and making sure that it's working correctly. And then beyond that, we're also working really hard on the observability layer. So in most use cases, it's actually really hard to determine like how an LLM is performing. And this is something that we ran into plenty when I was working before, because you change one thing about it and you can kind of wreck the entire flow. Like previously, worked on something, it was supposed to help people like reshop their insurance, and it needed to collect a bit of information. So like, what's your zip code? What kind of plan are you on? What are you interested in? Like probably like 5 bits of data had to collect, which was actually kind of like I'd say if you structure it out, between the question response, it's like, okay, we have to have like 10 or so question responses all in the correct order here to get things to work. And then we go through and we change something in the prompt. And then it's very difficult to determine whether or not like, okay, this improved question 3, but damaged question 10. So having some observability and having some testing built in is a huge advantage to dealing with this, because by default, LLMs are non-deterministic. If you ask GPT the same exact question 3 times, you will get 3 slightly different answers. And that's just not how people are used to thinking about writing code. Usually, I write a function and I call it, and it's usually going to give me the same output, or at least a very predictable one. This is like, in your code base, you have a random dice roller that is going to, monkey around with your outputs. And that's hard to build around if you don't have really good observability.
So Tyler, how long you are in business and till today, did you reach the profitable margin right now?
Well, let's see. About like 5 months, honestly. This is a pretty new venture here. Do we reach a profitable margin? Depends on if you count founder time in your cost. Most people don't, but I would say, yeah, we've started out with we leaned very heavily on marketing first, rather than like building the product first. So we went to market with effectively the skeleton of an idea, and landed our first contracts from there. Right now, I would say, we are revenue positive. We've got a lot in our pipeline, and this is probably the step where we might consider like fundraising, just because we've got the pipeline to support it, and it's about time to scale up on the engineering side.
So how much you are looking for right now?
Oh, I mean, if we would raise like $1 million seed round or something like that.
So, like, in terms of fundraising, it's like, what does that process look like? I think some of our listeners don't have any idea. Have you been through it, or like, what are you looking at right now to go through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, fundraising is a pain. What is the process for going about it? So starting out, you want to have good idea. Doesn't have to be a product yet. That is a kind of key differentiator. You have to have a good idea with capability of executing on that, and then you take that idea, put it into like a pitch deck or something. Doesn't have to be a lot of information if you're going out seeking like seed rounds or like pre-seed rounds. A lot of people expect that if you're going for like pre-seed money, that you don't have a profitable project yet. But there's like two main questions you almost always want to answer. First one is like, what sort of demand signal do you have? And that's where a lot of people like kind of like flounder, because they get really focused in on like the product itself, and they're like, oh, I can build this product. We can build X, Y, and Z. A good thing to remember is that the VC never doubts that you can build it. Like there's never a doubt in anyone's head that if they gave a team of engineers a few $1 million, they could build a product. That's just kind of like, that's a given here. What's more important is like, could you sell this product, or could you sell this product profitably, sustainably? So I'd say the first and most important thing, if you wanted to start the fundraising process, is just demonstrate some sort of demand signal. So for us, we've got a pretty decent pipeline of people who have said they're interested at this dollar amount. We just they're on our wait list. We need to onboard them. So like that's a good demand signal that we have right now. Other times it can be like, if you're a more consumer facing product, having a wait list, like having a few thousand people on your wait list, or having 10,000 people follow you on Twitter specifically, interested or asking for XYZ product. So you've got to like come in and show that you have demand, and that's usually like 90% of it. Beyond that, there's like a few other really common questions, which is how are you going to defend this market? Like why will your product be able to stick around when other products won't? Why now is a huge one. So people will come in, they'll come up with a product that like seems like it could have existed at any point in the past, and as a result, people are going to come and ask you like, well, why now? Like, why do I need to invest in you right now versus like 2 years from now? Like, it seems like over the past 10 years, this product hasn't come up, even though there's no like new unlock. So why do I need to invest in this right now? Why don't I just like wait for another year, see how you perform, and then invest later? So there's that big factor as well, in terms of proving that for our case, the LLM models were not quite as functional last year. Like that's the big why now for us is like, obviously there's been a big transformative tech shift. But yeah, you have to find some way to answer that question. Yeah, that's I mean, those are the kind of like big highlights. And then, you got to like, answer that, get a little bit of FOMO around your product as well. So, start with some unrealistic deadlines, and be like, hey, we are fundraising by the end of this week. Yeah, are you guys in or out? So that way, usually people will not invest until they think that somebody else is going to invest. So you've got like, hey, I'm talking to like 5 VCs right now, and all of them are like, hey, really interested in your product. Let me know if somebody else invests. And then once you finally convince one person to invest, it's kind of like a waterfall effect. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to miss the deal here.
So if you're going to raise $1 million today, where would you spend that money?
It's got to be marketing. That's the big spend here is, marketing. I mean, I'd like to say it's just engineering and, building awesome products, but end of the day, you can have the best product in the world, and if nobody's buying it, then, it's not great. So it'd be a 50-50 split on like engineering, marketing, I'd expect.
In terms of raising money, do you worry about dilution? Like, how do you make sure that even like having control of your company? 'Cause I feel like so many people make this mistake where they raise money, and then next thing you know, it's like the VCs basically owning the company, and they might change the direction. Or like, how do you make sure that things are still going to be in the way that you want them to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say usually like seed round, that's not so much of a worry. Seed to Series A, that's usually not like a huge worry. You're going to lose like a chunk of your company for sure. But I think that in most situations, most situations where you talk to a lawyer before accepting a check, you will end up with a decent chunk of your company, a majority of your company at the end of a Series A. Then, Series B and beyond is where you really get into like now the VC owns the company. And there's plenty of horror stories where people IPO and the founders get $1 million each. And it's like, well, hold on a second. How these founders end up with 1% of their company at the end of the day? So it's definitely something that will happen. The biggest thing is, I think, one, you don't actually always have to accept the highest valuation of your company. That's a big one, because people will convince you, like VCs, they want to have a return within their investment horizon, or they want to have a failure within their investment horizon. So they're going to be very big on, either succeed or fail, but do it fast. And so there's a lot of pressure to like spend the money immediately. So they want you to, you get your fundraising, they're like, cool, you have $1 million right now. You'll probably spend that in 6 months, and then you'll come back and you'll need $10 million or something like that. Now, that's the one big trick. You don't have to spend it as fast as they expect you to spend it. That's how you become more and more beholden, and you start to lose equity. So I would say, to prevent dilution, you can maybe accept lower valuations up front. So if some person wants to give you a $100 million offer versus or $100 million valuation versus like a $50 million valuation, use your best judgment in terms of what you think the actual worth is here. It's easy, you can always get valued higher later on based on certain successes, but like it's much better to like start out as the $50 million company that then raises another round at a $200 million valuation than it is for you to start out at the $100 million valuation and then raise a down round. And then you're like, oh, they actually valued you at 25 million, much harder to raise. You're in a much worse position there because you had a much overstated value at the beginning.
And so what is your top priority in the next 3 to 6 months besides raising money?
Top priority next 3 to 6 months. I'd say getting through the wait list right now in terms of like everyone is onboarded, people are paying on the regular, like there's a good, predictable demand curve going. And then getting more of a like automation in terms of like going from marketing to onboarding. Right now, there's a lot of like hand holding on the onboarding. So we're working on building out like a more no code type version of this in terms of getting it so that it's easy for people to get onboarded, because you've got some with our product in particular, there's a little bit of instability in the pricing because most of it is a percentage fee on top of what it costs to run the LLM. So it's like entirely usage based. So we make a lot more money on the people who come in and have like 1,000 people using it internally or something like that, versus the person who is using it and then like they try to launch a product that doesn't really succeed. So we get like 10 uses a month or something like that. Unfortunately, both those people have a tendency to have the same amount of onboarding time. So getting that whole flow onboarded, or getting that whole onboarding flow automated, is a big push for us.
So what is the one biggest piece of advice you wish you knew before you started this entrepreneurship journey?
Let's think. Before I started this, we're still like right in the thick of it. Haven't had like all of our big mistakes yet, so I don't have great I don't have a great bit of advice from this particular journey. However, I am trying to live out the advice from my previous company, which was the exact opposite of what we're doing here in terms of did all the engineering up front. It was just like I was very, very idealistic, where I was like, wow, and this was in like the hiring space. I was like, wow, all of these products really suck. If we just built a better product, then we would have like an immediate portion of the market share. And went through it from a very engineering perspective in terms of finding every single feature that was missing from Greenhouse, or was missing from TripleByte, or whatever hiring, like tech hiring solution there was, and just building that, automating it, and then deciding to go try to sell it afterwards. And when we got there, it was just like, oh, everybody wants something slightly different. We pretty much built in a silo, did not take customer feedback until we thought we had an idea of what the product was. So big learning from that, and what I'm really trying to apply here is not making any personal assumptions about what somebody wants. And it's because you're almost always wrong. You're never going to know. Like, if you really want to know what somebody wants, ask them what they want. Don't try to guess and check. You're just going to burn a bunch of time building something that people are going to be like, oh, this is neat, but I actually want this. And as a result here, we start out every client call with just a like, hey, so imagine you had the perfect AI LLM system. Tell me what it does, and then let them describe their kind of like perfect product. And we say, perfect. Yeah, that's what we do right now. And go with a full like marketing first approach.
100%. Yeah, that got smart. So if we're going to have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you expect things to go for Omni?
Let's see. 1 year from now, I expect Omni to be a pretty popular dev tool in terms of whenever somebody asks you to implement AI. So companies like, hey, cool, we need to have an AI product, in some form or fashion, that everyone on the engineering team just goes to Omni, hooks up a model, adds tools, adds API endpoints, adds like memory management classes, et cetera, to it. And it's all just kind of like pre-built and ready to ship. And nobody is, on their own anymore doing a bunch of like string parsing themselves, trying to, separate out different parts of the LLM response. So taking a lot of that like engineering effort out, automating it, and then just becoming like more of a name in terms of, hey, this is the tool that you should use if you guys need to build, document parsing, if you need to do like a chat bot, whatever, like this is the tool you need to use.
That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you or reach out to Omni, what's the best way? I mean, if you can share your website or email how somebody can get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, website's a good starting point. It's very simple. There's a big button right in the middle to get access, and that's get-omni.ai. Also has all of our like API documentation and everything there.
Well, Tyler, thank you so much for your time. We're rooting for you. Hopefully, we can chat again in 1 year from now as you guys keep growing and scaling.
Yeah, absolutely. Put it on the calendar, and we'll check in a year.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It's great talking to you guys.
Thank you,
Thanks. All
Tyler.
right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye bye.